The funeral was barely over when she showed up at my door. My son's widow. Black sunglasses, black dress, not a single tear. She didn't knock twice. She walked straight into the living room like she already owned it. "I'll need the keys," she said. Her tone wasn't a request. "The house. The office. Everything. It belongs to me now." I stayed quiet. My son's photograph sat on the mantel, smiling the same way he did when he was alive. He had trusted me with everything. The house, the business, the accounts. All of it sat in my name. She didn't know that. She only knew the fantasy she had built in her head. "You're old," she continued, folding her arms. "He told me I'd have it all. You can stay here for a little while, but soon this will be mine." That's what I was to her. Not family. Not a father. Just an obstacle standing between her and the life she thought she deserved. She started pacing the room, touching things she had never paid for. The furniture my son worked years to buy. The walls he built with his sweat. She stopped at my desk, slid open a drawer without asking, and began rifling through papers. I watched her. Calm. Silent. She thought she was clever, looking for deeds, titles, signatures. She thought the world was hers just because she wore his last name. "Don't worry," she said finally, snapping the drawer shut. "Things will look different soon. Brighter. Newer. Lighter. Once you're gone." When she left, the house felt colder. I sat alone in the living room, her perfume still clinging to the air, her words still cutting through my mind. My hands trembled, not from weakness but from something far stronger. She thought I was finished. She thought I had nothing left. She thought she could erase me as easily as she had erased her tears. But she didn't know what my son had left behind. And she didn't know what I was prepared to do with it. 3 days later she came back. This time she didn't bother with black dresses or quiet voices. She pulled up in a shiny white SUV, music blasting, 2 of her friends laughing in the front seats. They carried shopping bags like it was already celebration day. She walked right past me on the porch, perfume heavy in the air. "Where's the deed?" she asked, her heels hitting the floor with sharp clicks. "You can save us both time if you just hand it over." I stayed seated at the table, coffee in hand. "What deed?" I said calmly. She leaned forward, her lips curling into a smirk. "The one with my name on it. The one you're hiding. Don't play games. I know everything belongs to me now." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just watched her pull open drawers, flip through papers, and slam them back shut. Every second, her frustration grew. Her friends walked through the living room, whispering, pointing at the furniture. One of them even sat on my couch like she already lived there. They laughed, sipping from their iced coffees as if this was their weekend outing. She came back to the table, hands on her hips. "Listen. I've already spoken to a realtor. Once this is in my name, it'll be listed within a week. I'll get cash fast. You'll be free to, I don't know, find a retirement home." Her words were cold. My grip on the coffee cup tightened, but my face stayed calm. She thought she was in control. She thought she was closer to her victory. I slid my chair back slowly, stood up, and walked toward the mantel. My son's picture stared back at me, his eyes steady, his smile frozen in time. I whispered under my breath so only I could hear, "You trusted me. Don't worry." When I turned around, she was still watching me, tapping her nails on the table. "I'll be back tomorrow with paperwork," she said. "The lawyer will make it official. You'll be out by next week." Then she left, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. The house fell into silence again. But it wasn't the same silence. It was the kind that carried a warning. She thought I was powerless. She thought she was walking into her new life. But what was waiting for her was nothing she had planned for. The next morning a letter arrived. A legal envelope, her handwriting scrawled on the front. Inside was a copy of a petition she had already filed, an attempt to claim the estate in her name. Bold words stared at me, transfer of ownership. She hadn't wasted time. She wanted to move fast before I could even think. I sat at the table, reading every line. She claimed I was too old to manage the business. That my son had intended for everything to go to her. That I was just holding it temporarily. Not one word backed by evidence. Just entitlement wrapped in paper. For a moment, anger rose in me like fire. But then I smiled. She had made her move too soon. She didn't know the truth about the documents. She didn't know the lawyer who had drafted the will. And she didn't know the trust my son had signed, one that left her completely out. I folded the papers neatly, slid them back into the envelope, and placed it in the drawer. She wanted a game? Then I would play it silently, carefully. By noon, I drove downtown to meet the attorney who had handled everything. His office was small, tucked above a hardware store, but his knowledge was worth more than gold. He greeted me with a firm handshake, his gray suit wrinkled from years of work. "She's moving faster than expected," I told him, sliding the envelope across the desk. He skimmed the pages, shaking his head. "She has no legal ground. The house, the business, every account, they're sealed under your name. Unless you choose to give it, she cannot touch it." A weight lifted off my chest, but only slightly. "She doesn't know that," I muttered. He leaned back, studying me. "Then let her dig her own grave. The more she tries, the more proof we'll have of her intentions." I nodded slowly. The silence between us felt sharp, almost electric. This wasn't just about property anymore. It was about respect, about family, about the trust my son had left behind. When I left his office, the city street buzzed with traffic, horns, and voices. But inside me there was only stillness. I had a plan now. I wouldn't fight her with anger. I would let her walk straight into her own undoing. That evening, I placed my son's photo back on the mantel. His eyes seemed to follow me. "Don't worry," I whispered. "She'll reveal herself soon." 2 days later she arrived again, this time not alone. A man in a navy suit followed behind her, briefcase in hand. He looked polished, practiced, like someone who had done this many times before. "This is my lawyer," she announced as soon as the door opened. She didn't bother with greetings. "We're here to discuss the transfer. I suggest you cooperate." I stepped aside calmly, letting them enter. The lawyer set his briefcase on the table, opening it with a snap. He pulled out a thick stack of papers, sliding them across the wood. "All you need is a signature," he said, his tone smooth. "Once signed, everything can be settled quickly. No drawn-out process. No stress for you." I picked up the papers, flipping through each page slowly. My son's name appeared here and there, but nowhere was her claim backed by fact. No mention of the trust. No mention of the will. Just her demand written in legal language. She folded her arms, watching me with narrowed eyes. "It'll be easier if you don't fight. I've already started telling people I'm taking over the business. The sooner this is done, the better for everyone." For a moment, I let the silence linger. Then I placed the stack back on the table and pushed it gently toward the lawyer. "I won't be signing anything," I said evenly. Her face tightened, the color draining from her cheeks. "You're making a mistake," she hissed. The lawyer cleared his throat. "We can pursue this in court, of course, but I believe it's in your best interest to comply now." I leaned back in my chair, my voice steady. "Then take it to court. You'll find out soon enough." The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. He was expecting hesitation, maybe fear. Instead he found a wall. She slammed her hand on the table. "You think you can stop me? You think he wanted you to hold on to all this?" I didn't rise to her words. I just stood, walked to the mantel, and placed my hand on my son's picture. "He trusted me," I said quietly. "That's all that matters." The lawyer closed his briefcase with a sharp click. They left in silence, the sound of her heels striking the floor harder than before. As the door shut behind them, I knew something had shifted. She had played her first big card. And she had just lost. The summons came faster than I expected. A pale envelope slid under my door, stamped with the county court seal. Inside was her demand for a hearing. She wasn't bluffing. She was ready to drag me into a courtroom and try to rip apart what wasn't hers. The morning of the hearing, the courthouse steps were crowded. People shuffled inside with papers clutched to their chests, nervous voices bouncing off the stone walls. I walked slowly, steady in my dark jacket, carrying only one folder. Not heavy. Just enough. She was already there, standing by the entrance in a bright red dress, her lawyer beside her. She smiled when she saw me, as if she had already won. Her friends hovered near the door, whispering, waiting to see the show. Inside, the courtroom was cool and quiet, the wooden benches polished by years of battles like this. I sat on one side. She sat on the other. Her lawyer stacked a pile of documents high enough to block his face. Mine was slimmer. Just one envelope resting calmly in my attorney's hands. The judge entered, robes flowing, voice stern. The case was called. Her lawyer jumped up first, full of energy, his words pouring out like he had rehearsed them 100 times. "Your Honor, my client is the rightful heir to her late husband's estate. The defendant is withholding property and assets that were meant to provide for her future. He has no legal grounds to deny her what is hers." She nodded along with every word, chin lifted proudly. When the lawyer finished, the judge turned to my side. My attorney rose slowly, opened the envelope, and placed a single document on the desk. He slid it forward with steady hands. "Your Honor," he said calmly, This is the legally binding trust signed by the deceased. Every asset, including the house and business, was left in the name of my client. There is no mention of the petitioner anywhere in the record. In fact, this trust was drafted specifically to ensure she would have no claim. A hush fell over the room. Her smile flickered. Her lawyer stiffened, adjusting his tie. The judge leaned forward, scanning the document carefully. "This appears valid," the judge said, tapping the page. "Signed, witnessed, notarized. Unless there is evidence of fraud, the court sees no grounds for the petitioner's request." Her face turned pale. She gripped the edge of the table as if the wood could save her. Her lawyer whispered frantically in her ear, but nothing could change the ink on that paper. For the first time since this began, I allowed myself a breath. Not a smile. Just a quiet breath. My son's trust had spoken louder than her words ever could. The judge adjourned, the gavel striking once, sharp and final. She stormed out of the courtroom before anyone else moved. The red dress that was supposed to mark her victory only trailed behind her in silence. After the courtroom loss, I thought she might stop. But people like her don't stop. They only dig deeper. 2 days later, I noticed the first sign. A for sale flyer tucked under my gate showing my house. My address, my front porch, my driveway, all printed neatly with a realtor's logo. My chest tightened. She was moving behind the scenes, pretending she still had a chance. By evening, strangers began slowing their cars near the curb, peeking out windows like they were already shopping for their next dream home. One even had the nerve to step onto the lawn and take photos. I stepped outside. "Can I help you?" I asked. The man lowered his phone, embarrassed. The listing said this property was available." "It isn't," I said firmly. "And it won't be." He muttered an apology and backed toward his car. I stood there until he left. Then I went inside, picked up the phone, and called the attorney. "She's trying to list the property as if the ruling didn't matter," I told him. He sighed. "Then we'll send a cease and desist. She's digging her own grave here. Document everything. Every false step she takes strengthens your case." That night, I sat at my desk, flipping through the trust papers again. My son's signature stood bold on the page. His trust in me was stronger than her lies. And yet, I knew she wouldn't quit. She wanted the cash, the lifestyle, the freedom she thought she was owed. The next morning, I drove to the business office downtown, the same office my son had built with long hours and sweat. She was there before me, standing by the reception desk, telling the employees she was taking over soon. They looked uncomfortable, unsure what to say. Most of them had known my son for years. They respected his work. They respected me. But she spoke with such confidence, some of them almost believed her. I stepped inside, the room falling quiet. "This business isn't changing hands," I said calmly. "Carry on with your work. Nothing changes." Her face reddened, her jaw tightening. "You can't keep this up forever," she snapped. "You're just delaying the inevitable." I looked her in the eye. "The inevitable already happened, in that courtroom. You lost." She stormed out, her heels striking the tiles so hard the sound echoed long after she was gone. Later that week, my attorney called. "She filed another complaint," he said. "This time claiming emotional distress. She wants damages." I leaned back in my chair, almost laughing. She was desperate now, clawing for anything she could hold. But desperation only reveals the truth. And the truth was, every step she took was tightening the noose she had built for herself. Her desperation finally peaked. It started with whispers around town, people saying the business was under new ownership. She had spread the rumors so widely that even the bank manager called me in for a meeting. "She says she'll be transferring accounts soon," he told me, adjusting his glasses. We needed to confirm before making any changes. I nodded slowly, hiding the anger that burned just beneath the surface. "There will be no transfers," I said. "Not now, not ever." But it didn't stop there. A week later, she organized a dinner at the most expensive restaurant in town. Dozens of people attended, clients, investors, even a few old family friends. She booked the biggest hall, dressed in glittering gold, and stood at the center like a queen about to announce her reign. I arrived quietly, slipping into the back. She didn't see me at first. Her voice carried over the tables, confident and sharp. "Tonight," she declared, "marks the beginning of a new chapter. My late husband built this empire, and now it's my turn to lead. The business, the house, the legacy, it all belongs to me. And soon you'll all see the changes I'm bringing." Applause filled the room. Glasses clinked. People believed her. Some were skeptical, but most smiled politely, unwilling to question her claim in public. I waited until the main course was served. Then I stood, straightened my jacket and walked calmly to the front. The room grew quiet. She froze when she saw me. "Good evening," I said, my voice steady. "I hate to interrupt, but there seems to be some confusion tonight." Her eyes darted nervously, but she forced a smile. "What are you doing here?" she hissed under her breath. I ignored her and held up a folder. "Ladies and gentlemen," I continued, "this is the original trust signed by my late son. Every asset, house, business, accounts, was left solely in my name. Court has already confirmed it. There is no other heir." Gasps rippled through the room. People turned to her, eyes wide. The lawyer sitting at the far table shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze. Her golden confidence cracked. The color drained from her face as whispers spread like fire. Someone muttered, "So it was all a lie?" Another shook his head in disappointment. I closed the folder, calm and precise. "I respect your time tonight," I said softly. "But I won't let false claims stain my son's legacy. The truth is simple. Nothing changes." I left without touching the food, without raising my voice. The silence behind me was louder than any applause. That night, I sat in my car outside the restaurant for a moment, watching the lights flicker inside. Her empire of lies had collapsed in front of everyone she had tried to impress. And still, I hadn't lifted more than a single page to undo her. After that dinner, her reputation crumbled faster than I expected. The next morning, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Clients who had once taken her calls now dialed me directly, their voices sharp with disappointment. "Why would she lie like that?" they asked. "Why pretend?" Investors pulled out. Friends who had sat at her table avoided her in public. Even her closest allies stopped returning her texts. She had burned every bridge in one night. But she wasn't done trying. Pride never surrenders quietly. A week later she showed up again, this time at the bank. I was already there, signing off payroll checks. She marched up to the counter, head high, demanding access to the business accounts. "I'm the rightful owner," she declared loudly enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. The manager looked at her carefully, then at me. I gave him a nod. He reached under the counter and pulled out a folder. Inside were the trust documents, notarized, stamped, sealed by the court ruling. "I'm afraid you have no authority here," he told her firmly. "These accounts are permanently under his name. You cannot touch a dollar." The room fell silent. People turned, whispering as she stood frozen, her hands shaking on the counter. She wanted to argue, to fight, but the evidence was unshakable. Her voice cracked. "This isn't fair. He promised me, he said everything would be mine." I stepped forward slowly, my tone calm but final. "My son promised me one thing, that I would protect his legacy. And I have." Tears filled her eyes, but this time there was no performance. Just the raw weight of defeat. She turned and rushed out of the bank, her heels clicking against the marble floor one last time. That afternoon I sat alone in the office. Papers stacked neatly, phone buzzing quietly, the hum of a business still alive. I placed my son's photo back on the desk. His smile looked the same as always, but for the first time in months, I felt like I had truly honored him. Not by shouting. Not by fighting. But by standing firm, letting the truth speak louder than her lies. In the end, she wasn't just left without the house or the business. She was left with nothing that mattered. No trust, no respect, no place in the story she tried to steal. And me? I didn't need revenge. I only needed silence. Because sometimes silence is the loudest answer of all.